One thing is certain, you will never truly understand something until it happens to you. Some years ago, my 2-year-old daughter, she had a fractured thigh bone. And as a parent, it was really stressful knowing that the child is in pain. And I was confused, I was in fear, I was all over the place. The doctors needed a traction kit, something that would keep the leg stabilized for the next 4 weeks, so that the leg would heal on its own. And we couldn't find it. We combed the whole of Accra for the whole night, back and forth. We couldn't find the traction kit. We kept looking throughout the whole night, and through a friend's friend and a friend of a friend, some kind of long connection, we were able to eventually find it. But that was like the next morning. And as parents or as loved ones, there's nothing more nerve-wracking or frustrating than seeing your own child in pain, and there's really nothing that you can do. And it's even more stressful when you have to combine it with combing around the city looking for something that they need, and also still maintaining that strength that the child is being well taken care of in the hospital. It's something that's overwhelming, and no parent wants to go through that. But I'll say we were lucky because it was just a traction kit. If you have to compare it to something more critical like blood or a blood commodity or something like an anti-venom, the traction kit may not be that serious. But that's the reality of millions of people around the world. And they have to deal with this on a regular, especially people who live in very hard to reach communities with all these geographical barriers, and also people who live in mountainous areas. There are certain areas in Ghana that you actually have to go through one country before you come back in, before you can have access. And that's their reality. That's what they have to go through. And some of these communities have all these exacerbated by other social determinants of health, poverty, and the like. Now, that same year, my organization was expanding its operations into some of these areas, and I had opportunity to do some feasibility studies in some of these areas. And something really struck me. Via canoes, we had to commute to some of these hard-to-reach areas, the islands. And that's why when I saw the canoes in the Marae yesterday, I felt a strong connection there. One thing that the health worker said that has still stuck with me is we have to do this 12 times in a month just to send critical commodities to hard-to-reach areas, island communities, and we have to do it 12 times in a month. And trust me, the trips on the canoe, it can be an adventure. A risky one, though. Of course, because before you get on the canoe, they'll take your emergency contacts just so you don't come back. They know who to call. You could have water seeping into the canoe while on top of the water. You can be bouncing on the canoe for 2 hours. That's quite stressful. The canoe can hit a tree trunk on the water, and then that could lead to water seeping into it. If you get to an area where there's a high tide, it could just turn over the whole canoe. And thinking that health workers have to go through this on a regular, these are selfless people. I mean, who are giving it all just to make sure that communities have what they need. And without these people, communities on the other side would basically be at risk. Another health workers account that also got me thinking was one of an emergency situation where this time around it was a patient that needed support. And it happened at night, and there was no ambulance or anything, so that the patient had to be put into a canoe and shipped to the other side where they could have access to the health facility. Because the community within which they are from did not have the equipment and the things needed to take care of the patient. And so they had to put the patient in the canoe and ship them off to the island. And then I sat back and I thought, what if that was my little girl who was in pain with a fractured thigh bone in the canoe be put in the canoe and shipped off somewhere else. I mean, it raises lots of urgent questions. Is it fair? Why do people in these areas have to go through things like this? It raises questions about leadership as well. What is leadership doing? I mean, what are we doing? And so that brings me to leadership. Leadership is about influencing and enabling others to achieve a shared objective. And when leaders take a stand and show commitment, they're able to achieve ambitious milestones. But first, leaders must know themselves. They must understand their own strengths, your own potential, your passions, and what makes you really do the best of work. And again, leaders cannot do things on your own. By understanding your own strengths and that of your team, you're able to empower others, which could lead to exponential growth. And that is the kind of leader that I aspire to be, and that's why I'm here. One that uses this kind of understanding to drive very significant and exponential growth when you're talking about healthcare access. My leadership journey over the past year in this fellowship has been really exciting and one of significant growth. I'll say that I've learned a lot about myself, my strengths, my passions, my weaknesses, and what I need to do to become the best version of myself for the world. I've also had the opportunity to integrate new leadership models into my approach, which was very helpful when I was executing my fellowship project. I've also learned how to truly drive change through others, right? By understanding my team's assets, their interests, their values, we were able to do some really great work. We were able to dig into our data that sort of sets the tone for some advocacy work that we wanted to do. And working with my team, I'll mention their names, Indira, who led the data mining and insights. She led that work and did really great work on that. And there was also Shirley, who also did a lot of work around the public narrative and the storytelling. We were able to do effective work by distributing the leadership amongst these different groups. And I can say that the results of the work that we did has set the tone for a lot of the advocacy work we'll be doing in the next few months to try and drive equity when it comes to the distribution of healthcare commodities in Ghana and beyond. But this journey has not only strengthened my leadership skills, it's also reinforced the concept of collaboration and community-focused work. I truly enjoyed the work that I did with Zaki, Jasmine, and Hina on our session contribution, which we've been able to beautifully come up with a nicely written commentary piece on inequities and inclusivity with respect to digital health. And that's something that I want to carry on. But that whole project reinforced the power of fellowship because we are all very different people. It also reinforced the power of diversity in the fight against disparities. We all can be the same, but with our differences, we come together to be able to fight the disparities. And that's work that I want to continue doing. Now, health equity should be inherent in every aspect of healthcare delivery and medication distribution. Whether it's a pill, whether it's an injection, whatever treatment it is, it has to be accessible to everyone, irrespective of your socioeconomic status, your geographical location, your background. This I call equity in every dose. Now, how do we achieve equity in every dose? I'll talk about two key things. The first one is policy, and I'll zone in on sub-Saharan Africa. It is known fact that 60% of the population in sub-Saharan Africa lives in rural communities. And so it's just fair that any policy, any structures or systems that are being put in place addresses that 60%. And not just addressing that 60%, but also taking into cognizance fair pricing and things like effective distribution, because some of these rural communities are very difficult to get to. I know Africa has taken a very bold step in trying to encourage local manufacturing on the continent in the next few years. I think that's a brilliant idea, but it would not serve much purpose if certain key factors like equitable pricing and effective distribution is taken into account. And so we need to have solid policies and structures in place to address that once the continent has begun doing its own manufacturing. Once we have these policies in place, we should be able to execute. The second thing I want to talk about is innovation. Whenever we talk about innovation, the first thing that comes to mind is technology. Yes, technology is tied to innovation, but I would say innovation can come in different forms. With respect to technology, as the world is moving towards the fourth industrial revolution, it's become very clear that technology is going to take over every aspect of what we do. And so we need to be very open-minded about exploring new models of healthcare delivery. One very strong one that really showed up for us during the COVID period was telemedicine, which I know is being scaled around the world in Pakistan, in Ghana, led by my colleague, Dr. Hina, who's done great work in that area. And other technologies as well in that space, trying to just innovate the space and bridge disparities. When it comes to innovation in other forms, even the integration of community health volunteers and other forms of that kind of work can be able to bridge the disparities that we have within the communities, the gaps. And I'm really excited that my colleague Wilfred is doing a lot of work in Cameroon to scale this. And I'm sure in the next few years, he will be looking to do it in other parts of the world. But together, dose by dose, we can achieve health equity. But it will only take strong leadership and a leadership that owns the work that they are doing and takes accountability for what has to be done to achieve equity. Our world is in so many ways interconnected. And because of that interconnection, the equity gaps have become very visible. And so we need to work together. We all have a role to play, from law and policy, Odur doing a lot of work around law and policy, Gladys as well, to equitable vaccination led by Mario and a lot of work that he's doing in that area, and even to data and data-driven decision-making in healthcare, Jose, who's doing a lot of work in that area. Everyone has a role to play for us to be able to achieve health equity. But I want us to remember that our collective well-being is intertwined. And so we need to work together, dose by dose, to be able to build a much healthier and equitable future for all of us. So remember, our collective well-being is intertwined. And I am because you are. Thank you.